ladies and gentlemen. This is a story that came out September 10th, 2018 from Hechinger Report. And it is talking about how the colleges and universities will be impacted due to the low birth rate going on in America. You know, it could mean a huge problem for these universities and colleges and them being able to keeping their doors open in the future. College students predicted to fall by more than 15% after the year 2025. What does the declining birth rate mean for colleges and universities and the students who hope to get a college degree a decade from now? The answer depends on where you live in the United States and how selective the college is. For most colleges and universities, the outlook is grim, but that could be a good thing for their future students. Nathan Graw, an economist at Carleton College in Minnesota, predicts that the college-going population will drop by 15% between 2025 and 2029 and continue to decline by another percent point or two thereafter. When the financial crisis hit in 2008, young people viewed the economic uncertainty as a cause for reducing fertility, said Graw. The number of kids born from 2008 to 2011 fell. And we know it's been on a decline, but I don't know. I know they said, during times of economic crisis in America, there was a decline, but these folks have never been able to bounce back. You're talking about a whole decade later. We are now in 2018, so that's 10 years for people to bounce back, and it's not happening. Fast forward 18 years to 2026, and we see that there are fewer kids reaching college-going age. Birth rates fail to rebound with the economic recovery. The latest 2017 birth rate data from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention posts new lows, marking almost a decade of reduced fertility. But not all colleges will feel the pain equally. Demand for elite institutions, the top 50 colleges and top 50 universities as ranked by New World drop by much less during the 2025 to 2029 period. 18 years following the birth rate dearth. And student demand for elite institutions may be 14% higher in 2029 than it was in 2012. Meanwhile, regional four-year institutions, which serve local students, are expected to lose more than 11% of their students, from 1.43 million in 2012 to 1.27 million in 2029. The Northeast, where a disproportionate share of the nation colleges and universities are located, are expected to be the hardest hit. By contrast, mountain states, where there are fewer students and fewer colleges, such as Utah and Montana, may see slight increases in student demand. Graw's forecast for the number of students at two-year community colleges and four-year institutions are published in his book, Demographics and the Demand for Higher Education, with updates on his website. He breaks the numbers down not only by type of school and how selective it is, but also by demographic, region, and race ethnicity. Why do the forecasts sometimes move in opposite directions? Graw explains the elite colleges are less affected by the birth dearth because they're a small niche market of fewer than 200,000 students that has benefited from the explosion in college education since the 1980s. The people who went to college 20 to 30 years ago got a degree. They're now parents of kids who are looking to go to college in the next 10 years or so, said Graw. If your parents went to college, your probably going to college is much greater than your probability of going to a highly selective 4-year college is not a lot higher. Given a lot, so what they're pretty much saying is there's still going to be a demand of foreign students coming in from Asian nations, India. They're expecting the size of foreign students to grow. So that really will be their only hope, especially if there's not enough students to go to these colleges in America. So, the foreigners will still be coming over here, probably higher numbers. And they're saying that, many of them are still highly attracted to getting their education here in America. Meanwhile, less selective institutions are not as likely to buck the powerful demographic trend of declining birth rates. Northeastern schools, especially those who cater to students who live nearby and feeling more pain because of demographic shifts that began well before the Great Recession hit. Americans are continuing to move away from the Northeast to the South, to places like Texas. In addition, birth rates are lower in the Northeast, where there is a smaller Latino population, which is very true. That Latino population, even here in New Jersey, is not real big, not in comparison to a place like Texas. Latinos have historically had the highest fertility rates among U.S. racial and ethnic groups. This may be good news for students who are currently in 5th grade or younger. Graw predicts they'll have an easier time getting admitted to schools as colleges fight more fiercely for the available students. Students are going to be a hot commodity, a scarce source, said Graw. It's going to be harder during this period for institutions to aggressively increase tuition. Yeah, that's the thing. If you want, the Black and Latino students, you're going to have to do something about some of those high tuitions that you have in place. That's very true. So I'm just going to go down a little. Graw argues that colleges might be able to avoid closures, budget shortfalls, if they can reduce their dropout rates and focus on keeping students and their tuition dollars on campus. Graw cites the example of the University of Southern Maine, which is coping with fewer students but operating with a larger budget because of its efforts to keep students through to graduation. Expect more colleges to launch student retention and student success initiatives. So, am I surprised? No. If the low birth rates are business and it's closing schools around the country, then you can expect this to hit the colleges. It's inevitable, especially with this generation in school right now that will soon be moving into college. Of course, it's the face of college is going to look very different in this country very soon. I mean, 2025 really is not that far away. And I just can see a lot of these smaller colleges not being as desirable, and many of them will have no choice but to close their doors. But please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I will see you on the next video. Peace, family. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an article that came out in Bloomberg Business Week, September 14th, 2018. A world with fewer babies spells economic trouble. Absolutely it does. Because, no matter how much you may claim you're hanging on to the wealth, there's going to be less wealth because the working class is going to be fewer in every single country. Except for Africa, of course. Africa, they're still reproducing. Forget the prophecy saying overpopulation will starve the planet. The human race is approaching the point where it's no longer reproducing enough to expand the global head count. The world's biggest economies, the US, China, Japan, and Germany. It's already happening or will soon. Economists say these countries could see slower economic growth unless they increase their working age population by accepting immigrants, possibly from regions with higher fertility rates, like parts of Asia and Africa. Lower fertility rates, the number of live births per woman, could also threaten safety net programs like pensions and health care. 1. How big is the drop-off? Fertility rates have dropped globally about 2.4 this decade, from 5 in the 1960s, according to the World Bank. That's getting close to the rate of about 2.1 required to keep the world's population stable in the long run. Many wealthier countries, particularly in Europe, are well below 2.1. Several nations, Moldova, South Korea, Singapore, shares the world's lowest fertility rate at 1.2. Wow, they're not coming back. Not coming back, not with numbers that low. Most developing nations have much higher rates, with many in Africa at 5 or above. 2. Why has this happened? Lots of reasons. With advances in agriculture and medicine, people are living longer, and far fewer children are dying young. Increasing urbanization means families don't need as many kids to work the fields. More women are delaying marriages and children for work and education. Economists have also found an association between low fertility and higher incomes. Once a country's output per person passes $10,000 annually, women tend to give birth to no more than 2 children. Education and government policies, meanwhile, have sharply reduced births among teenage girls. 3. What will this do to the world's population? The United Nations calculated the world's population as of 2017 at 7.6 billion people, a number it projects will grow to 11.2 billion at the end of this century, after which it could begin to fall. But a lot of countries are going to shrink before then. With a fertility rate of only 1.6, China's population will drop 28% by 2100, ceding the title of world's most populous nation to India, the UN predicts. With the fertility rate of 1.4, Japan population will plunge 34% by 2100. The US headcount is expected to keep growing despite low fertility rates of 1.8 because of large numbers of immigrants. Through government policy could change that. Well, so you're depending on immigrants and not the people that were born here. So that says a lot, ladies and gentlemen. You know why they're depending on immigrants? Because they're already anticipating a lot of these folks are going to be so diminished in population size. It's going to take the immigrants to carry this society along with blacks and Latinos, who they're trying to desperately keep out of this article. But there's no keeping us out because we're not dropping in population size. We're not the ones. It's economically can still expand, but the pace over the long run would be limited to the speed at which productivity output per hour worked is rising. Since 2007 through 2009 recession, productivity gains have been relatively meager, making low fertility rates an added problem. If fewer people work, there's less income to go around. Fewer workers also means less tax revenue for retirement and health care programs. And that means governments might have to cut benefits, raise taxes, or borrow more, pitting the old and young against each other. 5. Where is this playing out now? Japan employers often struggle to fill job vacancies, and they're doing the same thing here in the US. I mean, look, they're claiming that, these population declines are going to happen until far out in the future. We know it's happening now because in the US, they can't fill all jobs. They're having a terrible time struggling to fill these job openings here. And it's not all opioid addicts either. Some of it is, not all of it. Spending on healthcare and pensions has swollen Japan's public debt to more than twice the size of its economy. The International Monetary Funds have estimated that the country's annual economic growth could be 1% point lower for the next 3 decades because of Japan's aging population. That means the country's economy forecast to expand 1% this year and next may stagnate further. 6. What can governments do? Immigration can help, but not all countries are willing to open their doors. Japan, historically wary of immigrants under Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, wants to allow more foreigners for limited stays. Abe is also encouraging automation and more women in the workforce. Germany's fertility rate is at 1.5, is the highest in decades thanks to a recent immigration surge, but also to adoption of family-friendly policies, including raising parental leave allowances. But in France, which for years has had pro-baby policies such as cash bonuses and tax breaks for parents, the fertility 1.96 rate is at its lowest level since 2005 because they can't have babies. They are barren. Okay, anytime you're offering cash for people, and this is all around Europe, by the way, it's not just France. All around Europe, they are offering cash to women that give birth, and they simply can't do it. Okay, they've been offering this now for a while. This did not just start. And their populations continue to fall. That tells you it is indeed a fertility problem. They can't reproduce. They can't do it. Money on the table or not, they can't do it. 7, can China reverse its expected population decline? Not likely. No, because it's been 20 years and they've been enforcing that one child rule for over 20 years. Even if they start having a lot of babies now, they're not going to catch up to the rest of the population that did not enforce those policies. Not likely. China changed its rules in 2016 to allow 2 children and now may remove limits altogether. While that may encourage some families to have more babies, it won't give a major boost to the national fertility rate, according to Chinese demographer Kai Yang. And not only that, remember, there's not enough women for the men to even marry now. So how are you supposed to boost the population and you got this huge population of men and very few women because they chose to abort their female babies? Among the obstacles, high cost, living costs, long work hours, and surging childcare expensive. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a worldwide problem, but we know it's not going on in Africa. Even in this article, they can see they are producing better than anyone else. But all of these other nations and, America, if you got to depend on immigrants to boost up your numbers, then it says you're not doing so well. But please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. These folks are out of here, whether they like it or not. What we are looking at is a worldwide extinction of certain populations on this earth. That's all we're looking at. And they can't stop this from happening. They can't. Please tell me what you think about this Bloomberg Newsweek article where they were pretty blatant in giving out this information. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I will see you on the next video. Peace, family. Back in the day, China had set these birth limitations in their country, and they pretty much screwed themselves into a low birth rate situation. Now, if you read the articles, the men outnumber the women, and there's just not enough women in their country for the men to even get married now and have a family. At first I wasn't understanding why they were marrying the African women. So many Chinese men are going into Africa and they're actually marrying the women. It's because they can't find wives in China. Now they have to consider the Chinese, you didn't see, they would, you would always see the Asian woman with the white man, but, they did not heavily date outside of their race. Now, I guess if they want families, they pretty much have to think about that. And a lot of them are marrying the African women because, you can even see the videos online of all of the African Chinese weddings that are going on. So here's an article that just came out in Bringing China Closer, GB Times, August 10th, 2018. Experts suggest China in birth restrictions as fertility rates plunges. They're actually at a level of no return, y'all. And wait until I get into the article and you'll see just what I mean. They're at a level of where it just simply can't be reversed. A Chinese expert has suggested the world's most populous country completely scrapped its birth limitation policy due to the fact its fertility rate has plunged since 2000. Chang Chui, director of the Population and Labor Economic Institute of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, recently told reporters from Chinese news magazine China Newsweek that the birth rate in China between the turn of the century and 2018 has been between, listen to this, 1.5 and 1.6 births per woman. And guess what? They're going through low birth rate and they still got restrictions in place. I guess they got the same high IQ as the people here. Okay. Lower than the 2.1 figure required for a population to maintain itself in the long run. So they are way below where they should be. A low birth rate leads to aging population issues, which is going on here in the US. You got an aging population that is greater in number than the younger population. Although China's elderly issues are not particularly serious at present, the entire country is aging rapidly. It took China, listen to this, just 18 years to reach an aging society, which means that they got to a situation where they are at a low birth rate in just an 18-year period. Usually it takes nearly a century for people to get to the point of low birth rate, and they got there in 18 years. All right. By contrast, it took the French people 115 years, and it took 85 years for Switzerland to get to this stage where they have an aging population that's greater than the younger population. Usually it takes a good century for that to happen. But in China's case, because they chose to abort the female babies and keep the male babies, they got there in just 18 years. Zhang is not optimistic about China's second child policy, as he believes it also imposes limits. He sees encouraging people to give birth to more children while placing restrictions on them as pointless. And he's right. But China still, you would think if they see it's only around 1.5 per woman in their country that they would back off of these policies. They still got strict policies in place for how many births a couple can have. And on top of that, they're going through low birth rate. I think we should scrap the limits altogether and let people have more. So he's just saying, China to back off of these restrictions and just let people have babies. That is the way to boost the low birth rate. Well, how do you turn it around when you got a society filled with men and very few women? You can't turn that around. Even if those few men that can marry the available women, it's not enough of them to make a difference now. You would need to have at least as many women as the men, or even more women than the men, for it to make a difference. But in their case, I don't think they can turn this around. But what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I will see you on the next video. Peace, family. ladies and gentlemen, this is my weekly commentary. I'm going to be talking about a couple of different topics. Now, we know that there are countries with populations where the old completely outnumber the young. And you may not see it now, but it's going to have a huge economic impact on those countries. Number one, that means there is not enough young people to fill the positions that are open. And it's going to have that chain reaction because the younger populations are not producing enough babies. That means a few decades from now, there's not going to be enough money flowing through the economy. It's going to be less taxpayer money. It's going to be less people buying from the markets on Earth. And economically, a lot of these countries are not prepared for that sort of thing. The low birth rate is a global phenomenon. It's happening everywhere in large numbers. So there's fewer children and a large amount of elderly people on the planet in many, especially the Western nations. And that's why they're calling it a demographic time bomb. And here in the United States, they're now admitting they have fallen below the fertility rate. The average American life expectancy is dropping because of the opioid epidemic and the suicides and everything that's impacting the younger generation. So all of this is happening simultaneously. You have the old population dying out, the suicides and drug addiction that's going through the roof, and you have this low birth rate. So we will start seeing this, and we know they're being dishonest about population numbers. We already know that. But it should still show up in some kind of capacity in the US Census, especially over these past upcoming decades. You should see less and less of the elderly and less births, as they start dying out. They'll go through their natural die out without really being replaced. Now because there are so many open positions on the labor market right now, I have read a couple of stories where they're asking many of these retirees to work longer if they would just work a few more years, because they're doing positions that are very difficult to fill. So, not surprising. I mean, things are changing rapidly, and there's no stopping it at all. I was looking at another article, guys, and I'll probably do this article for tomorrow, where they are closing maternity wards in from hospitals are shutting down because there are simply not enough people coming in and using the maternity wards anymore. It's less and less people going to use, any type of childbirthing at some of these hospitals where they have shrinking demographics. So they are closing many of those facilities because they're hardly being used now. So you should know that's going to happen, especially when they had to close down the chain of Toys R Us because there's not enough people with babies. People are buying less toys. There's not a lot of children in America like it used to be decades ago. So everything is going to have an impact from this shrinking population. And it's something all of these nations have to be prepared for. Africa right now has a booming population. That is a nation that a lot of people, I was listening to Dr. Mumby, and everybody is moving to Africa. The Chinese, the people in the Western nations, they're all moving there. And she was talking about Cuban doctors have been brought into Kenya. So everybody is running to Africa right now. There's a reason for that. Everybody need to have their eyes open about that. All right. Now, my next topic, I want to talk about the recent red tide that happened in Florida, where all of this sea life has been washing up on beaches. And, they're saying, are humans to blame? Of course they are. Of course they are. They're blaming red tide and the lack of oxygen in the water as causing this red tide. So everything, so fish, catfish, pufferfish, snook, trout, all of these different creatures, from crabs, eels, manatees, dolphins, turtles, all washing up. Ladies and gentlemen, on the beaches. They said the smell is, I can imagine how bad the smell is. So, are we surprised? No. These scenes have almost become normalized. And then you have the effects of Fukushima, which has gone worldwide. I don't even eat any of the seafood anymore. I gave up on that a while back. But I know they're still going to sell this stuff because it's big business in this country. So they're saying that many of the organisms around the world can cause harmful algae blooms, and that is known as red tide. Okay. And this has hit Florida over the recent weeks. And they're saying that this was probably one of the largest ones they've seen. It actually stretched across the coast 100 miles. 100 miles. Can you imagine driving 100 miles and seeing tons and tons of beach life? So it says right here, the latest bloom stretches around 100 miles along the coastline, miles offshore, often pushed into concentrated patches by winds and currents. So once again, I just don't know. They can't really clean this up, y'all. It is so far gone. The ocean life dying. We've been seeing this even long before the red tide. You can't even say it's the red tide anymore. It's all of the radiation in the water. And Japan has never done anything to clean up Fukushima, and it's bad. Every time one of these nuclear accidents happen, it usually has a global effect. And the outcome of it, you're going to see all of these dead animals from the ocean, just like we did see the same thing during the oil spills. It's nothing new. And as a result of all of these die-offs that you see, the ecosystem is collapsing. So not only do you have your ocean life suffering, this is having a major, major impact on farming and taking a lot of profit out of the farming. Things are not growing the same in this world. A lot of plants are not producing the kind of yields that they used to produce even a decade ago. So you have your food chain completely impacted by this. Farming is not the same. You can tell. Anytime you pick up articles and you see millions of dollars in crops that are rotting in the country because of the lack of labor. Now there's a lot of farms that are leasing part of their land or even selling their land altogether because they're tired of struggling every single year trying to get labor out there to help. You're really taking a chance on the immigrants. They may show up and then all of a sudden, and like many of these farms where the food is cropping, they disappear. It's not a reliable labor force. A lot of them leave for a various amount of reasons. It's not always ICE. Sometimes they just simply don't like the way they're getting treated, and they will just up and altogether just leave. And then that farmer is pretty much stuck with vegetables and fruit that they simply can't harvest on their own. So now with the ecosystem, what's throwing it off? It's many things. Number one, the world's coral reefs are disappearing. And I did a story on that, but it's been a long time ago about the coral reefs that are dying. Okay. And then you have the Antarctic regions where it's less snow, where it used to be once covered in snow. There are lots of areas that now have less snow coverage because the sea levels are rising, from all of the melting icebergs and everything that are there. Temperatures are a lot higher all over the globe. It's not just in certain parts. The entire globe is heating up. So when the globe heats up, of course, it's going to have an impact on everything, from the vegetation, the ocean life, marine life worldwide, and also the food chain is going to be impacted by it. So you have rising populations, growing incomes, but you are struggling with warmer climates. Even Canada and Russia, China, places where they normally have cooler temperatures, they're struggling with agriculture in those areas, as well as across Europe, where they have experienced a 40-year drought. Okay. And it's a big reason why you see China running into Africa to grow the food for their country. They're doing this, ladies and gentlemen, because they simply can't grow crops that well in China anymore. That's why they're making a beeline to Africa. And you see them doing agriculture all over the place in that country. You know, there's a reason why all of these Western European nations, the US, Russia, China, are all piling in, and Canada too, all piling into Africa. Africa got some of the most fertile land on the entire planet and the richest soil. If everything was so great everywhere else, forget about what people say. Watch what people do. They're all going into Africa, not only for the resources, but that's their means of survival. They're not going to be able to survive. Many of these countries do not have enough resources to survive without Africa. You can say whatever you want about that place. I dare you to live without it. You won't be able to do it. You wouldn't make it a month. You wouldn't make it a month without Africa. So we are seeing many climate changes go on. Now, here in New Jersey, I have seen some heavy rains this season that I haven't seen in a long time. And we have days that are just really strange. We'll have a day that the sun will be out, and then all of a sudden, you look up 5 minutes later, it's all cloudy, and then buckets start falling out the sky. And then it'll clear up, the sun will come out, and it will do that off and on all day long. All day long. The sun will come out, it'll get cloudy, dump a whole bunch of rain, then the sun will come out, and it'll repeat like that several times in one day. You can tell things are definitely changing. Now you have a heat wave over in Europe. We have these hot temperatures here in the US. And you see the drought all over in Europe. And you're going to pay the price for all of this in the market when they start marking up food and everything. You see all of this happening. And ladies and gentlemen, you see a lot of despair going on in farming alone. You have all of the farmers in France, the dairy farmers that are committing suicide. You have the suicides going through the roof here in the US among farmers. And farming is just not what it used to be. Agriculture is still a good business. I mean, people got to eat, but they are not even making the money that they used to make 15, 20 years ago. So economies are falling. And you can see, I mean, just looking at daily news every day, you're seeing the effects of it every single day. Now, more abuse on our ocean. Some of you might have saw the stories that came out where tons and tons of garbage washed up in the Dominican Republic and Haiti back at the end of July. They have been dumping in the oceans for many, many decades. You know, the world is completely out of balance. And what happens when people have waste, especially companies, corporations, hospitals, they hire waste removal and they take it straight to the ocean and dump it all in. What kind of items? Plastics, trash, clothing, hospital waste, you name it. It's all going in the ocean. All of it. And of course, it's going to float somewhere. You'll hear about this sort of thing happening off the shores. And a lot of times the islands will get hit, you know, places in the Caribbean will get hit with this massive amounts of trash floating up. And it's dangerous, you know, because you have children, you know, like in this picture here, you have children that are walking through in this garbage and sewage and stuff. It's disgusting. And sometimes we forget about Haiti. And even in Haiti, this washed ashore. I know they keep talking about the Dominican Republic, but it actually washed up in more places than the Dominican Republic. But, you know, the powers that be, they don't care about this kind of stuff. In fact, they're the ones causing it. And they don't care where this stuff goes after it's dumped in the ocean. And, you know, of course, many of these places, they depend on tourists coming and spending their money. So they have to now get out there and clean this up, which they are doing right here. You see them in the orange jumpsuits and they're trying to clean it all up. You know, you can't have tourists coming to your island and it's loaded up with just garbage. And you can still see it right here, where they're just trying to get as much up as possible from these beaches because, you know, their revenue comes from a lot of the tourists that come there. It's a lot of garbage floating up to your island, and it just completely spoils the entire environment there. I mean, there's nothing they can do but try to clean it up. What else can they really do? It's just so much trash. But see, this is what happens, ladies and gentlemen, when you don't care about the world that you live in. You don't give a damn, you know, and you also got to think about the amount of ocean life this debris will kill. It will kill the ocean life. You know, this is why you'll hear about, every now and then, you'll hear about a whale and it'll have like plastic bottles in its stomach and stuff because of all this crap out here. It's now interfering with them feeding in the ocean. But ladies and gentlemen, tell me what you think. I think it's sad to watch our world become such a big dumping ground. And the people that are in charge of it just simply don't care. They don't care. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family. I'd like to thank one of my subscribers, JG, for sending this story. This is absolutely phenomenal. Fertility rates are dropping across the world and could soon become a cause for concern. Ladies and gentlemen, it is already a cause for concern. And when I put out a few videos, there were a few people coming in my comment section insisting that Black people are going through a population decline. I tell you what, the data does not back up what you're saying. Those of you that are running around trying to say that, the data doesn't back you up. You can go back to the 1700s and look at the census, and every single time that census was done, the Black population increased, and it never stopped increasing. We never flatlined or had an era where more of us died than being born. So your little argument that the Black population is declining too don't hold water. Not to mention, when I go through this article, you're not going to see one African nation as part of the birth rate dropping. So again, your argument that it's happening to Black people too don't hold any water. All right. Fertility rates have already dropped below replacement levels in 83 countries, and the trend is likely to continue. This is huge, y'all. Okay. So if the whole world population is declining in 83 countries, that means less money will be circulated on Earth, less people in the labor force, less people out here spending and keeping the economy going. So it's going to be very easy for these countries to eventually collapse. They're not going to have enough people circulating any type of income or money through the economy. Now, there were many people running around here, and I've had conversations back in the day when I used to talk to everybody on the internet. I don't do that now, where people would come and say things like, well, it's too many people on Earth. You need to eliminate the people, and look at who's getting eliminated. Maybe you should have been more clear to the Most High on who you want eliminated from the earth, because the people that got on the soapbox doing that, it's their people that are being eliminated from this earth. Isn't that ironic? The people that wanted others off of this planet are the ones that are declining. You can't make it up. I guess the devil is no longer listening to their prayers. But let's get into this, ladies and gentlemen. The fertility rate, or the average number of births per woman, is typically a little concern for government and business leaders until it brings about population decline, shrinking the labor force and substantially increasing the proportion of elderly. Decline begins when fertility falls and remains below the replacement level of about 2 births per woman. A half century ago, 6 countries, Czechia, Estonia, Hungary, Japan, Latvia, and Ukraine. 5% of the world's population reported fertility rates slightly below replacement levels, and that was a half a century ago. Now, it was 6 countries. Listen to this. It was 6 countries a half a century ago. Today, a record high of 83 countries, representing about half of the world's population, report below replacement level rates. By 2050, which it's going to be sooner than that. That is a wishful number right there. More than 130 countries, or about 2/3 of the world's population, are projected to have fertility rates below replacement levels. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to look closely at that sentence. Now, didn't the Most High talk about 2/3 in the Bible? 2/3, y'all. And that is exactly the wording they are using in this article about the population levels of people that will disappear. 2/3 of the world. And it says 2/3 in the Bible. Okay, non-believers. This is why I don't listen to you. Now, let's get further into this article. Many countries manage low fertility rates for decades. The fertility rates of Canada, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the United Kingdom, for example, have been below replacement level, listen to this, for more than 40 years. This is why I'm telling y'all, this stuff has been going on for decades, long before we start hearing about it, even here in this country. If you look at the US Census starting in the 50s and bring it all the way up to present day, there has been a steady decline in mainly the white population in this country. And it started back around the 50s. And you can see this drop every single time the census was done. This did not just start a few years ago. It's just a few years ago, they just start talking about it. Big difference. Most European countries have remained below replacement levels, listen to this, for more than 25 years. Japan in 2017 had the fewest births since official statistics began in 1899. So you can see it was 6 countries in 1965 that were below replacement levels. By 2015, there were 83 countries below replacement levels. And they're using the 2050, but I'm telling you, they don't have that much time. They don't have that much time. That's why you're seeing these people act out all out in public, making spectacles of themselves. Future rebounds in fertility cannot be ruled out, but once fertility falls below replacement level, the trend endures. And as you can see, none of those countries in all these decades have been able to bounce back. You know, even the scientists will tell you once you reach a certain level, there's no reversing it. They can't reverse it, ladies and gentlemen. They can't. And even if they slightly reverse it, they would still have to catch up to the groups that never had a population decline. You know, and I didn't even know until Hurricane Maria that Puerto Rico had a population decline on that island, and it was going on for quite some time. The Puerto Ricans that live in mainland America, they did not have that issue. But on the island of Puerto Rico, they were having problems reproducing themselves. Interesting. This pattern has been especially evident in countries where fertility has declined to 1.6 children per woman, including Canada, China, Germany, Hungary, Italy, Japan, South Korea, and Russia. Among the factors responsible for below replacement fertility levels are lower child mortality rates, widespread education, increased urbanization, improvements in the status of women, including increased employment and economic independence, availability of modern contraceptives, delay childbearing, as well as the decline of marriage. See, the decline of marriage is global. And I told you guys, around me, when I was growing up, I saw wedding parties almost every weekend. I kid you not. We used to run into them on the road, or they would be passing by the street that I live on. We would see them all the time. And sometimes every church in my neighborhood would have a wedding going on. Every single one. Now, I'll probably go months without even seeing a wedding party on the road. And then all of a sudden, I'll see one. But it went from going and seeing sometimes multiple wedding parties on the road a few decades back to now seeing virtually none. I can't even tell you the last time I saw one on the road. I did see one on the road last year, but from that point on, I haven't seen none. And if you go past the same churches that were doing a lot of weddings, those churches are closed. The parking lots are empty on a Saturday when most weddings take place. Those churches are closed. Nobody's there. The parking lots are empty. So I do see the difference in the decline of marriages going on around me. So I know that's true. And it seems now, just looking at this article, it is worldwide. Less marriages are going on worldwide. And pension systems and increase cost of childbearing. Available demographic evidence suggests that factors will persist and become widely globally. Declining population size. In many developed countries, significant number of women remain childless. The percentage of childless women age 40 to 44 years in the United States, for example, doubled from 1976 to 2006. And you know what? I did an article on childless women, but it was more about Europe. And they said the number is exploding across Europe. There is now a lot of these women in their late 30s and 40s that aren't married and don't have children. And they're having a hard time finding a good mate. Many of them said they pretty much gave up. I did a video on this before. But you can see it has doubled in the United States. And I know it's astronomical over in Europe too. Reaching over 1/5 of women in 2010, no less than 1/5 of women age 40 to 44 years were childless in Australia, Germany, Japan, Spain, and the United Kingdom. Reasons for not having children vary, often passing personal, financial, political, and environmental considerations. Among women having children in developed countries, most of 1 or 2 children, with a smaller number choosing to have 3 or more. Countries with the lowest proportion of births after a second child is in 2015 include Spain, 11%, Greece, 13%, Italy, 14%. In most OEDC countries, less than 1/5 of births represent children beyond a woman's second child. Wow, that's pretty low. A notable exception to this pattern is in the United States, where 30% of births represent children beyond the replacement level. Since the start of the 21st century, close to 20 countries have declined in population size and are aging rapidly due to low fertility levels. And we know that's going on right here in the United States. If current below replacement fertility rates remain unchanged, populations of 40 countries, including China, and see, China pretty much did this to themselves with that, with them restricting how many kids each family could have. They said if you go to China right now, there's tons and tons of men and hardly no women, not enough women for them to marry. But they pretty much screwed themselves over. And they're not going to bounce back from that, ladies and gentlemen. You can pretty much say China effed themselves over for good doing that. Germany, Japan, Russia, and South Korea are projected to be smaller by mid-century. Even if fertility rates were to increase modestly, as assumed by a United Nations projection, the population of those countries are still expected to be smaller by 2050. And as you can see on this chart, the lighter shade blue is showing the constant decline in each country, and the solid darker blue is showing you the labor force. And these places are not going to be able to turn themselves around. More challenging for governments are projected declines in labor force population, age 20 to 64. Working age population declines exceeding 20% are expected in many countries, including some of the world's largest economy, such as China and Japan. Expected population declines are accompanied by rapid population aging. And you know what it is, y'all? You know, in the Bible, the Most High heavily encouraged couples to be together. Do you know in your first year of marriage, your husband didn't work? He got that time off from work so he could spend that whole year bonding with his wife. And then he returned back to work. But see, in this society, you give birth and within weeks you go back to work. That's not how it's supposed to be done, according to the biblical text. Once children come along, if that man gets time to be with his family, but they don't encourage that in none of these societies where they have declining birth rates. They don't encourage that family bond. You know, that 1 year that your husband was with you, that unbreakable bond between the husband and wife, that's why that man had the year off after he took a new bride. This country is so money driven, it puts money ahead of everything, including the family. So I'm not surprised that you're struggling with your population. None of these countries that I'm mentioning to you encourage the family like that. And then they got these divorce laws set up that would discourage that would discourage any man from getting married. You get a divorce and You got to give part of your income and, in many cases, property and everything to the other party. And many people don't like that. And because of the ways they have these divorce laws set up, a lot of people don't want to get married anymore. They don't want to get stuck in a situation that might not work. And I know you're not supposed to think like that. You're supposed to believe in your relationship, but they got too many things, too many cutthroat things in the laws. And that's the biggest problem with America. Too much cutthroat things and not enough positive things to encourage the family or encourage the building of a family. As a result, below replacement fertility and increased longevity, populations are becoming the oldest in human history. Increases in proportion of elderly, those 65 years and older, are projected to be substantial and widespread. And that's what's happening here in America. Right now, the biggest population of elders are white. After they die out, they'd have no more big populations. And they're dying out right now as we speak. Okay. By mid-century, for example, the elderly are expected to account for more than a third of the populations of Germany, Italy, Japan, and South Korea. And you know what? Even when I was living in Germany, they were on a major decline then. This is why many of these European nations are now complaining about the migrants and the immigrants that are coming over. They are literally taking it over because they can't reproduce themselves. So they're pretty much screwed. But, they're between a rock and a hard place, because if you don't let the immigrants and the migrants come, then those economies are going to fall. They don't have enough white people to carry the economy anymore. So if they want to keep those countries going, they're going to have to let the immigrants in. There's no other way to do it. The relative increase in the dependent older population has repercussions, especially regarding retirement ages, pensions, taxes, voting, health expenditures, and elder care. Some political leaders acknowledge the challenges. Paul Ryan, outgoing Speaker of the House U.S. of Representatives, pointed to a need for higher U.S. birth rates in this country. Well, that's easier said than done. Anybody can walk up to a mic and say bigger, the population need to have more babies, but saying it and doing it are two different things. Baby boomers are retiring, and we have fewer people following them in the workforce. At the start of the year, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe labeled Japan's dwindling birth rate alongside the aging society as a national crisis. Well, with Fukushima going on over there, I don't know how he's going to rebound from that. He won't. Okay, and then Sultanka Petrova, Deputy Labor Minister of Bulgaria, described the country's projected decline in its working age population as a social and economic bomb that will explode unless we take adequate measures. And here's a chart, y'all. And you can see every one of these places in the chart are countries where they have a declining population. And I want you to look at the fact that there are no African nations on the chart. There are no, listen to me now, listen to me. There are no African nations on this chart. Can I repeat myself one more time? There are no African nations on this chart. So please don't come in my comment section ever again with population declining is happening to Black people too. If you put that in the comment section, I will personally take it out because you are a liar. So if you put it there and it's gone, you can come right back to the source, me, because I'm going to be the one getting rid of it. Nearly 2 out of 3 countries with below replacement fertility have policies and programs to raise birth rates. In addition to public programs promoting marriage, childbearing, parenting, and gender equality, governments try various incentives to raise fertility rates, including baby bonuses, family allowances, maternal and paternal leave, tax breaks, flexible employment schedules, and family-friendly work environments. Costs of those incentives can be substantial, while in some countries, such as Mexico and the United States, public spending on family benefits is well below 1% because they don't believe in that here. They don't believe in it, and it shows. It shows in many ways that they are not concerned about families in this country. I have worked with, I know one of the first jobs I worked on, a woman got pregnant. Do you know they all turned on her in the office after they found out she got pregnant? They didn't like it, and they turned on her. See, that's the kind of stuff that happens at work, y'all. You know, these people are not for family like you think they are. You know, they'll say all the right things, but when it comes down to doing it, that's a whole different ballgame. Okay, so they spend well below 1%, which is not shocking because America is not a family-oriented country. It is a country that puts money ahead of everything. In other countries, including Denmark, France, Sweden, and the United Kingdom, family benefits amount to 3 to 4% of GDP. Some European countries, including France, reduced their comparatively generous family benefits to scale back budgets. And see, there you go, the word budget. It's a money thing. So the hell with family, we got to save money. That's pretty much how this world works. You know, that's why I'm telling you that this world is spiritually dead. And the people dying in it, that just confirms it right there. I'm just going to go down a little. Countries worldwide increasingly aim to reduce immigration levels and stem record flows of refugees by erecting fences and barriers, strengthening border controls, tightening asylum policies, and restricting citizenships. Attempts by regional and international organizations to encourage acceptance of immigrants and growing numbers of refugees, counter fierce political resistance, public opposition. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter how much you oppose it. These folks, they're worried about their bottom line or having to live without. They're not even willing, you know, and see, that's another thing. And I meant to bring this out before. See, these folks are so used to being handed everything. So if they have to live without in order to build their fertility rate and their economy, they're not going to do it. You'll have plenty of opposers. I'm not doing that. Why should I be without this and be without that? That's how they think. They're not willing to make the sacrifices in order to save themselves. That's what you got to understand. Number one, they're not even willing to admit they got a problem. Now, if they're not going to admit they have a problem, how do they do something about something that they won't even admit is going on? So they're pretty much doomed. There is no turning back the clock on this thing. It really isn't. Okay. For most countries, sustained below replacement fertility rates promise population decline. Communities that refuse to adjust will only exacerbate the consequences of these powerful demographic trends. Just what I was saying. They're not going to make sacrifices because these people are too damn selfish to even help themselves in this kind of way. So don't expect for them to turn this thing around. They're not. It's impossible. It's impossible. If they were going to do this, they should have done it a few decades back. Then it would have made somewhat of a difference now. Even if they tried to have a bunch of babies now, they're not going to catch up to everybody else that never flatlined or lost more of a population than it could replace. So it's pretty much over, and it's going to be over long before 2050. 2050 is just a date to buy time to stay in power. That's all that date is. But there's no turning this around, ladies and gentlemen. There's no turning it around. I'm still blown away at the fact that they have 2/3 in there. And that is in the Bible. Wow. Can't make it up, y'all. This is something. This is huge. This is huge. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. And if you can support my channel, please do. Your support is always welcome. Peace, family. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a story that came out in gvwire.com. I'll leave the link to this article in the description box. Perhaps you've heard that Americans aren't having as many babies as they did in the past. And that's true. That's very true. And it's no secret that the birth rate is at an all-time low in the US. Is it a ticking time bomb? Just watching the way these folks are conducting themselves out in public and getting caught on camera, you better believe it is. In fact, the US birth rate dropped at an all-time low in 2017. American women gave birth to 3.85 million infants in 2017, a 2% dip from 2016, according to the Center for Disease Control. At 60 births per 1,000 women of childbearing age, this marks the lowest birth rate. There are reasons for concern, yes. The fact that American women are having fewer than 2 children each doesn't bode well for the economy. The New York Times survey writes Hillary Buick, science reporter for Business Insider, rich countries like the US and Japan are struggling to make enough babies. As sizable populations of older adults retire and age out of the workforce, younger people are having fewer kids. It's setting up a ticking demographic time bomb, readying the explode when there aren't enough young people to care and pay for the older generation needs. So, are today's young adults focused on themselves and simply don't want to hassle of raising kids? No. Most of the concerns are economic, according to the recent survey of young adults conducted by Morning Consult for the New York Times. They're lying. They're lying. They are lying. They are lying. See, you know what it is? They think if they say this kind of stuff that it makes them look responsible. No, it doesn't. It don't make them look responsible, ladies and gentlemen. This is all smoke screens and mirrors. That's what this is. If they could have babies, you would see it. It would be reflected out here. Many of them simply cannot have children. When I was working in corporate America, there were always women in the office that I worked in that struggled to get pregnant. And I remember this. So no. Mm-mm. Because the fertility rate, let me just go down a little bit. All right, so now we know the demographics are changing in America because there is no dip in the birth rate and the immigration, children that are born here through immigration, also the Latino and Black communities and Asians in America are not experiencing a low birth rate. Now, outside of America, Asians are experiencing low birth rates in their countries. But here in America, it's really not that prevalent among Asians. They are having birth rate growths in this country because they don't have those kind of restrictions that they had in China. Why not more kids? Number one reason cited in the Time survey for not having children was the high cost of childcare, 64%. Slightly more than half answered wanting more time for the children I have, and 49% said they were worried about the economy. More than 1 in 3 cited no paid family leave and worried about global instability. Yeah, you better believe this world is unstable and it's getting worse. 42% did check off want more leisure time, and 36% responded that they struggled to balance work with life outside their jobs. Well, you should not be struggling with that. I'm sorry, but no, nobody should be struggling with that. When you are with your family, that's your family time, and you should learn how to differentiate the two. You know, even when I used to work as a manager in IT, I used to have to be on call. But you can best believe I was always able to have time for family. We went on family outings, went to the beach, went to amusement parks. We were able to go out and have fun. You know, I never worked to the point where we didn't do things together. Miller points to policies used by other nations as a way to reverse declining birth rates. Researchers say the United States could adopt policies that make it easier for people to both raise children and build careers. Government spending on childcare for young children has the strongest effect. Policies that encourage parents to share childcare help too. Germany and Japan have used such ideas to reverse declining fertility. The US will not do it because this is a very money hungry nation. Everything that's done in this country is always motivated by money. So if they put these things in place and it means less money, they're not going to do it. If they can't make money off of these policies, they're not going to do anything or make changes in the US. They'll just sit there and watch the birth rate continue to drop. They don't care. And plus, remember, the elite, they want to thin the herd, and that's what they're doing. Please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family. This is an article that came out in the New York Times, March 21st, 2018. Why outer suburbs in the East and Midwest have stopped booming. Many counties, including rich ones, are aging and experiencing more deaths than birth without growth through immigration or migration. Take a look at this map. The red is showing you the deaths, which are now outpacing births in the US. Wow. And as you can see, it goes up every 5 years on this particular map. And that's 1991, 96, 2001, 2006, 2011, 2016. Look how red the map is. You can't hide this. You can't hide it or deny it. Plain and simple. Hunterdon County, New Jersey is rich, which is very true. It's probably one of the richest counties in New Jersey. It ranks 6th nationally among counties in median household income and has 4 decades exemplified at the American outer ring suburb. But in one crucial measure, this exuberant enclave 60-mile west of Manhattan resembles old mill communities in northern New England or impoverished regions of Appalachia. The measure is death as compared to birth, otherwise known by demographers as natural increase. But this is not an increase. This is negative. That's what it is. And as you can see right here, Hunterdon County residents gave birth to 3,590 babies between 2013 and 2016. But even more residents, 3,647 died. So you can clearly see there were it was less births than deaths. So it's really true. Now, when you go back 4 years, 2 decades earlier, there were 5,882 births and 2,947 deaths, which is the norm. But you can see that's no more. And as you can see on this chart, the gray line are the births, which are below the red line, which indicates death. With new county-level census population estimates due out this week, demographers will track not just the population gains and losses, but the components of change, births, deaths, and the movement of people. And while migration, which counts people moving both domestically and immigration gets most of the attention. Changes in birth and death patterns are increasingly important. Some American communities that until recently were considered demographic boom towns are now caught up in a downward demographic mix. Young people having fewer children, the baby boomer generation getting older, and migration patterns stalled by the recession are resuming, but only in certain parts of the country. Through 2016, about 1 in 4 outer ring suburbs were experiencing more deaths than births, including 18 of 30 such counties in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Some of the once fastest growing counties in the United States are growing no more, and nationwide the birth rates has dropped to levels not seen since the Great Depression. Wow. It is one of the biggest puzzles. Now, this demographer is just talking about the changes that they have noticed. So I'm going to go down a little bit. More than 1,200 counties in the United States, home to 1 in 7 Americans, have a negative natural increase in population in 2016. In total, 1,700 counties experience a negative natural increase at least 1 year this decade. For many counties, this makes migration especially important for population stability and growth. Counties in the Northeast and Midwest that have traditionally lost residents to the South and West are having a harder time propping up their population numbers. Some maintain their numbers because of immigration, but American immigration policy is now a subject of debate. And a smaller number of immigrants would put more pressure on counties facing population loss. The nation's sprawling growth pattern has taken its share of criticism. It's associated with long-distance commuting, environmental degradation, and urban decay. But population stagnation in places that had been growing will most likely bring its own set of problems, including pressures on real estate value and eventual shrinking of political representation. And it starts with babies, which we know people are not having as many today as they did years and decades before. The estimate lifetime birth per woman is down 16% from a recent peak in 2007. New Census Bureau projections say that Americans over 65 will outnumber children under 18 for the first time in U.S. history by 2030, and that a rising number of deaths will increasingly offset how much births are able to contribute to population growth. That's going to be very hard. Right now, the baby boomers are the last biggest population right now. So if they're not giving birth, there's no way they're going to be able to replace the baby boomers that are currently dying out. Migration dropped significantly during the recession, Mr. Johnson said, but has returned to pre-recession patterns abate at all slower pace. Florida, Texas, and Arizona have all seen population inflows resume. For example, while states in the Northeast and Midwest that were losing residents to migration have resumed losing them. Births, on the other hand, have not returned to pre-recession patterns. They've instead skewed sharply in a negative direction. The number of deaths continued to rise during the recessionary period, but births have yet to rebound from the impact of the recession, Mr. Johnson said. This has been most pronounced in places that have long struggled economically, but it's also now increasingly common in well-off suburbia. In many areas, young people, besides having fewer children, are not as enamored of the suburbs as previously, the previous younger generation. And that is true. I live in the suburbs. And in the township that I live in, there are fewer people now. You know, before there used to be a lot of people, but that has changed dramatically. This is especially true in cities experiencing urban rivals like New York. Millennials don't want to be in outer suburbia. Yeah, most of them want to be in the city. That's very true, said James W. Hughes. Okay, so whereas previous generation of young couples streamed ever further out to the suburbs in search of larger lots and lower taxes, the current crop prefers Brooklyn, Jersey City, and other locals close to the urban core. Perhaps the largest symbol of Hunterdon County shifting demographics, Mr. Hughes said, is the 1,000,000-square-foot octagon office building that lies abandoned in the county's lush woodlands. Merck erected an environmentally friendly facility of 460 acres with much publicity in the early 90s, only to pull up stakes 20 years later and move back to the suburb interring. Wow. Look at that. That was a big facility. Actually, I had a friend that worked in this very facility for Merck, you know, and it's not surprising. There are so many places that are closing. You know, I even noticed it around me. When they built it, no expense was spared. Now it just sit there, Hughes said. And though local officials recently announced the company was in negotiations with a buyer, that facility is ginormous. I've been there a few times, but I had a friend that worked there for a few years. And Merck was the largest pharmaceutical in New Jersey. And I didn't work for Merck. I used to work for Bristol Myers Squibb. So I had one friend working for this pharmaceutical. I knew quite a few people that were working for the pharmaceutical companies back then. Okay. Population has grown rapidly for years in the 11 outer ring counties of the New York metropolitan area, Mr. Hughes said. But those counties are all like Hunterdon, shrinking with slow migration and more deaths than birth. Enrollment in some Hunterdon County school districts is down by as much as 20%, he said. And although the plenty of older residents remain in place, they will most likely end up paying more to live there as the tax base shrinks along with the population. The birth-death ratio is declining fast in the suburbs of large cities. So, I remember a time when the suburbs were booming. Now, believe it or not, it has switched. The cities are now booming. All right, so in 2018, there were 1.9 births for every death in what Brookings term emergent suburbs, places like Hunterdon County, where the suburban foothold has not yet overtaken the rural character. Less than 10 years later, the ratio had dropped to 1.5, roughly the rate of rural America last decade. Not only are many outer suburban counties aging, but they also tend to be disproportionately white, said Mr. Fry, which probably contributes to the falling birth-death ratio in suburban counties, since the birth rate is especially low for white women. In some parts of the South and West, the birth-death imbalance is masked by increasing migration, which still drives population growth. The suburbs there are still popular and attract local, national, and international migrants. Yet, many counties in the North are net exporters of migrants. More people leave than move in. Very true, because that's how it is around where I am. Mr. Johnson said, I'm just going to go down a little further. All right. The only other time we've been in a situation like this has been in the Great Depression itself. There was a drop in women having children, especially young women, and they never made up for never having children young when they got older. So there you go. So they're acknowledging that this drop in birth is mainly impacting the white community. But many of these things we already know, but this really kind of cleared the air that this thing is real and it's still going on. And as you can see from this interactive map, it gets very red. Every 5 years, it gets very red. So you can clearly see all the deaths that are occurring in the country are not being replaced by births. Wow. Please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell and please share these videos. Peace, family. As many of you might have heard, Toys R Us is closing their doors all around the nation. And it's shocking to some people because they've been a big toy giant in this country for a very long time. And this is an article that came out in the CatholicCitizens.org, March 20th, 2018. Toys R Us blames birth rate for business failure. All right, I'm just going to skip down a bit because the author is kind of talking about their experience. All right, Toys R Us has obviously not managed to maintain the magic. As it prepares to close its doors, people are questioning what went wrong for the once mighty cultural emblematic business. In its court filings, one of the factors Toys R Us itself has blamed is the world's low birth rates. The decrease of birth rates in countries where we operate could negatively affect our business. And they're right. If people aren't having babies, they're not going to buy toys or anything for newborns, and that's really true. Most of our end customers are newborns and children, and as a result of our revenue, are dependent on the birth rates in the countries where we operate. In recent years, many countries' birth rates have dropped or stagnated as their population ages and education and low income levels increase. A continued and significant decline in the number of newborns and children in these countries could have a material adverse effect on our operating results. Although online competition and bad financial and operational decisions must also surely be factors, the company claims in its annual report that its income is linked to birth rates, and it appears to be right. Fertility has declined worldwide to unprecedented levels since 1970s, and by 2011, total fertility was below 1.4 children per woman in half of developed countries. As the Washington Post observes, the change in the number of children born in the previous 12 years tracked closely with the company's changing annual revenue, as shown by the following graphs, which we don't see, but some are wondering if Toys R Us is just the first of many businesses to feel the economic effects of a lower population growth, which will eventually affect the whole economy, which is true because even the diaper manufacturers, I did a video on that a few months back, and they're talking about how it's very challenging on their sales and their bottom line because, less diapers are being bought, less toys and anything that they put out, formula, and they're just not making the money that they used to. Before, years ago, the baby business was booming and there were a lot of people having babies, and now things are just not the same for these businesses. And how do you stay in business if your whole existence count on people having babies and they're just not reproducing now? So I can certainly understand. I have previously discussed some of the far-reaching economic ramifications of an aging population here in numerous other posts. The economic effects will still be greater when the world's population actually starts to decline. There are differing long-range population projections, and they depend on a range of assumptions. One Austrian institute estimates that there is an 85% chance that the world's population will stop growing before 2100. And it is, in fact, most likely that the global population will start to shrink before that, around 2070. A recent comprehensive study by the Institute of a International Institute for Applied Systems analysis reached the same conclusion based on the input of over 550 experts. So there you have it. They are closing their doors because of low birth rate. No wonder why they're closing nationwide. Wow. Wow. But, a lot of these businesses are failing now. This is just the norm now. Please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell and join me on Black Junction TV and blackspot.com. Peace, family. This is an article that came out in the Chicago Evening Post, February 23rd, 2018. And look like the U.S. fertility falling short of what women want. Demographic intelligent advisor comment on the trends behind the falling U.S. birth rate statistics. Writing in the New York Times, the economist Lyman Stone predicts that U.S. births fell to 3.84 million births in 2017, down from about 3.95 million in 2016. Stone was drawing upon research from Demographic Intelligence new 2018 U.S. fertility forecasts. Stone, who serves as an advisor to Demographic Intelligence, also note that the U.S. total fertility rate fell to 1.77 lifetime births per woman in 2017. Such low fertility is below what women want in the United States. What's driving the decline in U.S. births? The team of demographers and family scholars at Demographic Intelligence identify 4 factors driving the recent fall in births. To share now, unmarried women, well, we always knew, in the US and really all over the globe, unmarried women will use contraceptives. I mean, hey, when I was unmarried, I did. So, all right, so that's one factor. The second factor is young adult sex in America. So not as many young people are having sex and getting pregnant, and that's the 18 to 30 group. And that's rose 10%, and it went up to 18% between 2014 and 2016. All right. Marriage rates have been falling among adults, and that's true. There's a lot of people out here, in fact, many that want to be married and they're not married. And that is the people between 18 and 64. That's where marriages fell. And it went from 54.2% in 2010 to 48.6% in 2016, but that's always been low. And I can tell you, I even noticed that when I was growing up, I kid you not, it was almost every weekend I would see the wedding parties on the road every single weekend. The whole time I was growing up, I remember it even when I was a teenager. Now I can go out on a Saturday and not run into a wedding party on the road, sometimes weeks or even months before I see one. And sometimes it would be multiple, because around where I live, there's about 3 churches in walking distance from my house. And I remember growing up, there would be weddings at all 3 churches. You would see multiple wedding parties on the road. Now, it's rare to see one now. Very rare. Finally, immigration rates have been declining, especially in wake of the 2016 presidential election and Trump's policies. Demographic intelligence analysis indicates that births are now down among foreign-born women than native-born women. So having the immigrants here is really not helping the birth rate, y'all. It's not. So the immigrant women are having fewer babies than the women that were born here. So that's not helping them. They were counting on them immigrants to help pad up the numbers, y'all. Ain't happening. The decline in U.S. births since 2014 is surprising, given that the economy has been improving, says Demographic Intelligence Sam Sturgeon. Well, if your women are barren, it doesn't really matter what the economy is. But changes in young adult relationships, sexual practices, and contraceptive usage appear to be pushing births downward. That's not the only reason. See, they're not talking about all of these women out here that can't get pregnant. You notice the article is conveniently skipping over the infertile women that are out here, and there's a lot of them that just simply can't get pregnant, and it's not even bringing that up. Moreover, Trump administration policies are also discouraging immigration, which has an impact on births. The big question is, when will the decline in births come to an end? It won't. It won't. We addressed this question in the latest edition of the U.S. Fertility Forecast. Maybe it has something to do with your 6,000 years being up. You know, it has a lot to do with it. And it's just giving you sort of like footnotes at the end. If you want to see more information and, as far as trending on births and weddings and marriages and all that stuff, which everything is down in the US. Everything is down. And you know what? I did an article on how even abortions are dropping in the Black community. It was up there for a while, but even that's declining. It's not as many Black women getting abortions anymore. Everything's dropping in this US economy. So I'm not surprised. Things have to change because we can't go to the next level with things as they are. So things are going to have to change whether people like it or not. And it's happening. It's inevitable. You're not going to stop this downward trend. I mean, even your experts say once a certain groups drop in birth rate, just like over in Europe, once you reach that point, there's no returning back from that. There is no group that ever existed on this planet that went through a declining birth rate and they bounce back. They can't. They can't. If they could bounce back, ladies and gentlemen, you would have seen it by now. They can't do it. That's why they're talking about cloning and all that other nonsense and trying to use the uterus of foreign women and all that stuff. If they really truly could do it themselves, they wouldn't have to go through all of that stuff. And there's scientists trying to play God and clone people and all that stuff. I've read numerous stories about that stuff, all around the world. The scientists are trying to figure out ways to clone, and it's ridiculous. It really is. But please tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell twice. Join me over on Black Junction TV and blackspot.com. Peace, family. While we've been hearing about the low birth rate that's going on across America and actually in many places on this earth right now, this is a story that came out December 11th, 2017, and it was on wshu.org, and I will leave the link to this article in the description box. New estimates from UConn's Connecticut State Data Center shows the state should add 60,700 residents from 2015 through 2040. According to the Connecticut State Data Center at UConn, Connecticut's population growth is slowing compared to other states in the region. The center is predicting a growth rate of 1.7% from 2015 to 2040, compared with more than 10% growth in Massachusetts and 7% in Vermont. Patrick Flannery, an economist at the State Department of Labor, says a big factor is that fewer children are being born in Connecticut. We're going to see a decline in the number of school-age children, but that is not due to migration. That's due to the fact that the birth rate has been very low since the Great Recession. So the Great Recession, ladies and gentlemen, was like around 2008. That's when it was. When the Great Recession hit in 2007 to 2008, the birth rate declined, okay, which many of us know this has been one of those phenomena happening across the earth. Flannery It says at the same time, older Connecticut residents are leaving the state. If we actually stopped out migration from Connecticut, the population would age even more rapidly because, in fact, the out migration that we're seeing really is concentrated in those older groups. Okay. A lot of times when people retire, and many of you probably seen people do this throughout your life, they go down to a warmer place to retire, especially if they're in the north. So they'll go somewhere like Florida and, buy a condo or a home down there and retire. Flaherty says Connecticut's population growth is projected to be higher in the cities. For example, Bridgeport is expected to see a growth rate of 6% compared to the 1.7% state average. All right. So the state of Connecticut have fewer children, and the older population seems to be moving out of the state. And I'm sure this is not the only place in America this is happening in. I mean, even in my state, I did a story probably over a month ago of how um, the demographics of the children are changing in New Jersey school. New Jersey school is starting, it has, actually, it has happened. The children of Latino and Black descent are now the majority, and the white children in this state, as far as public schools are concerned, they are in the minority. So the shift is definitely changing across America, and there are fewer children in many states, to be honest with you. Please tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe, and don't forget to hit on that notification bell, and also join me over on Black Junction TV. Watch my videos, like my videos, and if you happen to have a channel over there, please let us know what your channel is. That way, it'll give us an opportunity to subscribe to you as well. Peace, family. Ladies and gentlemen, I was looking in the comment section on my video for low birth rates for the US and South Korea, and I saw a few folks, it wasn't everybody, definitely not the majority, putting out there that Blacks have a low birth rate too. That is false. That is false. And I challenge all of you that put that stuff out there to find that information. I'm going to prove to you right now in this video, our numbers have always increased every single year. Now, this is from the U.S. Census American Fact Finder. This is showing you all of the population. And I just want you to take notice to where it says Black or African American. Okay, Black or African American. Now, this is set on July 1st, 2010. We were at 43,350,057. That was the estimate amount of Blacks in this country, which we know they're undercounting us. We know this. But one thing they're not denying is our increase every year. All right, so I'm going to show you July 1st, 2011. You can see we increased. So we're at 43,928,553. So we went up. So here's another year. July 1st, 2012, we went up again. 44,512,625. So we went up again. There is no decrease in the Black population. Again, let's go to July 1st, 2013. We increased again. 45,094,000 and I'm sorry, 45,094,625. and 738. So we went up again. We went from 44 million to 45 million. Okay. Now here's 2014. We went from another increase. If you look at this number, 45,672,250. All right. There has never, if you see, I went from 2010 to 2014 and we increased every single year. Every single year. So those of you that are out here trying to say, we did not increase, I want to challenge you on this today. Here's 2016. 2016, we went up to 46,778,674. So we increase consistently every single year. Consistently every year. There is no decrease from 2010 in the Black population to 2016. It's been a steady increase. So those of you that are putting out there that Black people have a low population, I challenge you today to provide the proof, and don't go to no white supremacist site or some white supremacist article and show that as proof. I don't want to see it. If you come to the census or come somewhere where numbers are kept, and I'm putting you to the challenge to prove that the Black population has decreased. There is no decrease. And I showed you a 6-year span, and there have been no drop in the Black population at all. So when you put falsehoods out there and post it in the comment section, yes, I'm going to come back at you. So please leave your comment and subscribe. And if you can make a donation to my channel, please do. Peace, family. Story that was sent to me by Robin, the Girl Wonder. I want to thank you for sending this story. It kind of follows up on the story I did just a few days ago on the Caucasoids' low fertility rate among the men, the low sperm count. I tried to open up the BBC link also that you sent me on a similar story to this, but for some reason the page would not show up. It just kept saying page not found. So I don't know what's going on there, but I will use this article. Sperm count drops 50% in the US and other parts of the world. So it goes right back to saying exactly what I touched on a few days ago. And this is good because this is like a really good follow-up article that came out in the Chicago Tribune on this same topic. The quality of sperm from men in North America, Europe, and Australia has declined dramatically over the past 40 years, with a 52.4% drop in sperm concentration, according to a study published Tuesday. The research, the largest and most comprehensive look at the topic involving data from 185 studies and 42,000 men around the world between 1973 and 2011. Okay, so this is really interesting because as you go into this article, because it touches on a lot of the things that I spoke about, but as you go a little further into this article, it lets you know straight up. The analysis found drops only for men in Europe, North America, and Australia. Now listen to this. And not for those in South America, Asia, and Africa. So there are no fertility issues with Black people at all, ladies and gentlemen. Not at all. This is only Caucasoid males, which tells me It's genetic, but they keep claiming that, it's environmental, it's all these other things. I'm not buying it. It's genetic. Now, maybe I would say it was environmental if maybe it was impacting North American white males, but no other white males on the planet. No, it's affecting all of them, no matter where they are in this world. That, ladies and gentlemen, is genetics. I don't give a damn about what they say. Swamp explained that this could mean that there's something specific to certain cultures or regions that affect a sperm, but that it's also possible there's just isn't enough data yet to draw confirmed conclusions about the rest of the world. Bullshit. It's genetics. It's their recessive genetics. There have been far fewer sperm studies conducted in non-Western countries. Well, it doesn't need to be none checked. They're not having any issues. So what are you checking for? A study published earlier this year about China's Hunan province found that 56% of the sperm donations met the criteria for health in 2001 versus only 18% in 2015. The most important data points in the new study involve sperm concentration for what are known as unselected men who haven't yet proven they are fertile. These are men in the study who are on the younger side and not yet fathers, or do not have partners who are pregnant. Researchers estimate that these men had an average sperm concentration of 99 million per milliliter in 1973, but that had dropped to an average of 47 million per milliliter in 2011. That is a disturbing number given that according to the World Health Organization criteria, men with a sperm concentration of less than 40 million are considered to have an impaired chance of conceiving, and those with a sperm concentration of less than 15 million per milliliter are unlikely to be able to have children. These numbers mean surprisingly higher proportion of men are falling into the infertile and subfertile categories, Swamp said. It's genetic. Wow. It's almost like they don't want to come out and say that. They will just dance around the whole thing. It's genetic, damn it. It's genetic. There are numerous theories about what may be happening to sperm. It's genetic. Many scientists said the most sensitive period may be during the first trimester, when the developing fetus reproductive system may be impacted by a mother smoking, stress she experienced, or food she ate, exposure to chemicals that can change hormone levels, known as endocrine disruptors, are among the issues being studied. Over the lifespan, men are exposed to a number of other things that could potentially influence sperm concentration. Pesticides, leads, x-rays, stress, and countless other factors. So you're saying the whole white male population has been exposed to things that the other males in this country have not been exposed to. Ain't buying it. It's genetic. The changes in the womb can cause permanent damage, Swamp explained, while the adult exposures are most likely reversible. The issue of sperm isn't just about having babies. It has larger implications for men's health. Poor sperm health has been linked to cardiovascular issues, obesity, cancer, and more generally to higher rates of hospitalization and death. While men's life expectancy is increasing overall thanks to advances in medicine, nutrition, and sanitation, it isn't unthinkable that could one day reverse. Having a low sperm count is a signal, Swamp said, that there is something wrong in men's overall health. Now, the BBC article that didn't come up, when it did come up at one point in time, but when I was about to do this video, it wouldn't come up. It specifically pointed out the white men of having this issue. So, shocking that it doesn't come up now, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, this low sperm concentration is impacting white males and no one else. It's genetic. But let's go ahead and play this video. Okay, and it's no wonder why American white couples are now flocking to Eastern Europe for surrogate mothers because they just can't have babies. And this is serious for them. It's very serious. If you can't replace the people that have died off, then you're pretty much doomed. And remember, they only produced 5,000. Their population, the Caucasoid population, only grew by 5,000 people over a 1-year period between 2015 and 2016, ladies and gentlemen. But you have hundreds of thousands of them dying every year, and they're not able to replace the population that died out. That's a huge, huge problem. You are looking at human extinction if you can't replace the numbers that have died. At least match it. They can't even match it. But tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe. And if you can donate to my channel, ladies and gentlemen, please do. Peace, family. Ladies and gentlemen, we keep getting all of these different reasons on why the sperm count is low and these folks are not reproducing. Now there's a new reason. This came out in The Independent, November 14th, 2018. Climate change could lead to lower sperm count in men, study shows. Now, for a while, it was the plastic, all these things. But now, today, it is climate change causing low sperm count, ladies and gentlemen. So let's go and find out why it's climate change. Scientists have suggested that increasingly temperatures that are a symptom of climate change could lead to lower sperm counts. Using red flower beetles as a proxy for humans, a new study showed clear evidence of lower sperm numbers and viability as temperatures increase. Study co-author Matt Gage, an ecologist at the University of East Anglia, said beetles were used because they are one of the most common species on the planet. And so these results are very important for understanding how species react to climate change. We know that biodiversity is suffering under climate change, but the specific causes, sensitivities are hard to pin down. We've shown in this work that sperm function is an especially sensitive trait when the environment heats up. And in a model system representing a huge amount of global biodiversity, Mr. Gage said, the beetles were subjected to controlled conditions and a 5-day heat wave. Heat wave conditions, 9 to 13 degrees above the typical high temperature for 5 days, damage males, but not female reproduction, according to the study published in the peer review Nature Communications Journal. So, putting heat on insect reproduction. So, what they're saying is the hotter the temperature, the less productive the sperm was in the male beetle. But the female was fine. It further states successive heat waves almost sterilize male beetles. Wow. So you mean to tell me when it heats up, these guys already walking around with low sperm count will be sterile? Wow, y'all. Now, isn't that something? According to the University of Rochester Medical Center, in order for males to create viable sperm, the temperature outside of the testicles have to be cooler than internally. If somehow the male beetle was able to produce in that temperature, their offspring had shorter than average lifespans, according to researchers. Okay, so when they turned up the heat, the sperm count dropped in the male beetle. And the ones that were able to produced an offspring that had a much shorter life expectancy. Interesting. Chris Sales, another researcher on the study, said research has also shown that heat shock can damage male reproduction in warm-blooded animals too. And past work has shown that this leads to infertility in mammals. Our research showed that heat waves half male productive fitness. Wow. And it was surprising how consistent the effect was. The authors hope the results will allow for more understanding of conservation efforts and effects of climate change on humans. Well, they're already saying the world is heating up fast. Well, I guess the Most High knows what he's doing if he's heating it up on these guys out here that already got less sperm than their forefathers. By the time he gets this earth boiling, they're going to be sterile. That's what it's telling us, right? So these guys already got struggle sperm, right? We'll have no sperm at all, ladies and gentlemen. I wonder if they'll all become sopranos, you know? Maybe will the voice change when the sperm goes? They're gonna start sounding more feminine and everything. You never know, right? But please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family. Ladies and gentlemen, they have a new reason for why the sperm is low. First, it was the sunscreen, then it was the plastics, and now it's the marijuana. So stay tuned for the next reason for why the sperm is low. So this is an article I want to thank one of my subscribers, JG, for sending. October 9th, 2018, from the Daily Mail. Fertility risk from cannabis, marijuana linked to lower sperm count and more abnormalities. So I wanted to see what abnormal sperm looked like. So I Googled it and came up with this picture. So this is a normal sperm form right here. These are abnormal. I guess it's like this one is small, this one is larger than normal, this one even smaller, a two-headed one, two tails. Wow, this is crazy, y'all. I didn't even know this sort of thing happened. But there you go, abnormal sperm. All right, so now they're saying that it's coming from the cannabis. Marijuana may damage semen quality and affect male fertility, new research suggests. Researchers looked at samples from men in Washington, where the drug has been legal for recreational use since 2012, and compared it with their cannabis consumption. They found that men who had consumed cannabis in their lifetime were more likely to have abnormally shaped sperm and lower concentrations of sperm compared to men who had never used the drug. Interesting. Lead researcher Omer Rahim, who presented his paper today at the American Society for Reproductive Medicine conference in Denver, said these findings show doctors should warn men trying to conceive that marijuana may play a role in slowing that process down. Sperm quality and counts are plummeting across the US and worldwide, and no one can pinpoint the driving force. Since it's likely the result of multiple factors, including chemical exposure and poor diet, researchers are exploring all areas to find ways to curb the drop. Cannabis, too, is a booming but understudied area that has scientists both excited and skeptical. The drug is now legal in more than half of the United States for medical use and 9 for recreational use. And yet science is still racing to catch up with legalization, and the true benefits and downsides are still coming to light. Interesting. All right, so I'm just going to go down a bit. So he took cultures from men under 45. All right. Before sending their samples to be screened at the lab, the men were given a healthy assessment form to fill out, which include questions about their marijuana consumption, as well as tobacco consumption, age, and race. Dr. Rahim's team then cross-referenced their answers with their lab results. About half of the men, 174 or 43%, had consumed marijuana in their lifetime. Many of them, 103, 25%, said they did not use the drug anymore. And the rest, 71 or 18%, defined as current users. Regardless, those who had ever used the drug had poorer semen quality than those who hadn't. The team saw damage on all fronts. Decreased volume? Really? Morphology, which is the shape, and total progressive motile count. Wow. How many sperm can actually move? That's just like the article I did yesterday, the ones that can't swim. All right. Men who smoked marijuana also had higher risk of abnormally shaped sperm, which can hamper its attempt to enter an egg. Doctors need to be aware of the negative effect and counsel their patients about the negative effects, Dr. Rahim told dailymail.com. Marijuana has been legalized in 9 states, particularly West Coast, but there are negative effects. We need to do more studies to understand these negative effects. That's interesting. Now it's the marijuana that is giving them poor sperm quality and abnormal sperm cells. I'm still banking on genetics, y'all, but please tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an article that came out on abc.net.au. We already know about China's declining population. They pretty much messed themselves up with the one-child rule, and now they have a disproportionate, large amount of men and hardly no women. China has done probably some of the highest rates of abortion on the planet, to the point where they have damn near made their women extinct. There's so few of them now. And since they've done this imbalance to themselves, they're now trying to make up for it by allowing couples to have 2 children. But here's the problem. It's not that many women for the men to be couples with. So China is pretty much screwed, because ultimately, if there's not enough women to go around, the men have one of 2 things to do. They're going to either go homosexual, or they are going to venture outside of China seeking employment and a wife and children. And they're already doing that in Africa. They're marrying the African women, and you're going to see them venturing out to other parts of the world doing the same thing because they can't have those things as long as they're in China. That's really what it's boiled down to for the men. If they remain in China, there's a great chance they will never get married and never have children. So the way I see it, it's pretty much over for China. It really is. But let's get into this article. China's aging population, low birth rate to cause unstoppable population decline, experts say. China's population is set to peak at 1.44 billion people in 2029, but it then faces a long period of unstoppable decline, government scholars have warned, which is correct. You can't reverse what you messed up for a 40-year period. The world's most populous country must now draw up policies to try to cope with a declining labor force and a rapidly aging population, according to a summary of the latest edition of the Green Book of Population and Labor, published by the China Academy of Social Sciences. Growth in the working population has stagnated, the report warns, and the rising number of elderly people will have a far-reaching impact on social and economic development in the country, especially if fertility rates remain low, and they are low. They are low. I will never forget, I watched 60 Minutes, I believe it was last year, and they went to a school in China, and you saw nothing but a classroom full of boys. And I believe they said there were, out of the whole school, there were 5 girls, and everybody else in the school were just all boys. There was hardly no girls. But that is the end result. They've damn near made their girls extinct in this new generation that's now of working age. Okay, growth in working population has stagnated, and I'm just going to go down a little. China's population is expected to fall back to 1.36 billion by the middle of the century, which could mean a decline in the workforce of as many as 200 million people. If fertility rates remain unchanged, the population could fall to 1.17 billion by 2026. To me, they're being generous in these numbers. I think the decline is going to be way quicker than what they're projecting. China abolished its controversial one-child policy aimed to curbing population growth in 2016 instead of allowing couples to have 2 children. So now they are allowed to have 2 children as of now because of the change in policy. And I believe they changed that policy in 2016. But even changing that in 2016, how do you make up for the 40 years where you told people 1 child only? However, the country's birth rate still fell 3.5% in 2017 and is expected to have fallen again last year. So there's a lot of articles, y'all, coming out about China's population, and I think it is because they know how bad this is. It's the same way with America when they come out with articles about the large elderly population and the populations following those elderly people are way smaller. So as these folks die out in China, they don't have the population to replace them, which means economically, just like here in America, things are going to dramatically change. What we are seeing, ladies and gentlemen, is a natural extinction going on the planet. And what it boils down to, those of us that are one with our sun will survive. Those of you that are not in tune with the sun and you tend to burn and have all kinds of issues in the sun, you're out of here. Please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I will see you on the next video. Peace, family. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an article that came out in the Times, December 28, 2018. This is a short article, but very significant, especially when it comes down to the low birth rate stories that I have been doing over the past few weeks. China just published some new numbers, which shows a bigger steep than they anticipated in their population. Birth rate slumps again as China faces new population crisis. Wow. So China ended its one-child policy in 2015 after it being in place for nearly 40 years. But it is very late in the game for them to do that. Now they have a two-child policy, and in some cases, I even read where they're even possibly allowing people to have 3 kids, but they waited way too late to do this. How do you do this when you have such an imbalance between men and women? And a lot of the women said they don't even want to have children. So how do you get out? You won't be able to get out of this at all. China is facing an alarming slump in its birth rate despite the government's effort to boost population growth since the end of its one-child policy. The number of births is expected to have fallen sharply from 17 million in 2017 to perhaps only 14 million this year. Wow. They went from 17 million to 14 million in 1 year. According to demographers, the figure would respond to a birth rate of 10 per 1,000 population. The global average is 18.5 per 1,000. So you can see China is well below that 18.5. 18.5 per 1,000 is the global average, and they are at 10 per 1,000. That is significant. The forecasts add to a growing sense of crisis as China grapples with the consequences of decades spent trying to curb its population. The one-child rule, introduced in 1979, ended 3 years ago, and a two-child policy was adopted in 2016. Officials called for as many as 20 million babies to be born this year. They are not going to see that amount, not with the population imbalance they have now. Remember that people were aborting the girls and keeping the boys. So projected rise in China's over 60s. All right, so that means they have a big aging population and a younger population that can't replace them as they die out. So it's just showing you a projection in this chart right here. You know, and believe me, that's all it is a projection, because it's just no way. How do you make up for 40 years of not really being able to grow families? And China is one place where abortions are still out of control. They said a lot of people are secretly still trying to find out if they're going to have a boy or girl. And of course, if it's a girl, they're aborting it. They said that stuff is still going on. They're just going, you know, in the background and doing it, where they blatantly did it out in the open before, but it's still happening. So that being said, that means you're going to have another generation of mostly males and hardly no females if it's still going on. But hey, this is self-inflicted, China. You did this to yourself. But please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I will see you on the next video. Peace, family. I would like to thank one of my subscribers, JG, for this article that came out in NPR December 21st, 2018. Japan's population is in rapid decline. Now, I recently did an article on Japan where they're trying to give free homes to couples if they have children. So now this article, I mean, I don't even think this is 2 or 3 weeks apart. Japan's birth rate has dropped to a historic level, the lowest since data gathering began in 1899. That's what the Japan Times has reported, citing government figures released Friday. For years, Japan has seen a decline in its population, leading experts and lawmakers to consider the economic and social repercussions. On Friday, the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare estimated that 921,000 babies will be born by the end of 2018, 25,000 fewer than the previous year. Birth and death statistics show that the pace of Japan's population collapse is speeding up. The Japan Times reported about 127 million people live in Japan. The population could drop below the 100 million mark by 2049, according to the National Institute of Population and Social Security Research. Not only is Japan expected to enter a long period of population decline, but also its inhabitants are aging out of the workforce. By 2036, 1 in 3 people will be elderly, researchers project. To help ensure Japan stays on a path of sustained economic growth, we know we must address the birth rate and aging population issues. Communications and Cultural Affairs Minister. Okay. Samada said the government launched a new economic policy package in 2017 to address the dilemma. The plan is designed to promote both supply systems, innovation such as robots, and human resources development revolution. That is so cold. They like artificial stuff, unbelievable. A social security system for not only the elderly and the youth, but also Japan's working age generation so they can provide with support for child rearing and nursing care. Amid a shrinking workforce, Japan has already turned to robots for some of its daily needs. They are used in restaurants, stores, and banks. The International Monetary Fund stated last year that because of the aging population, robots will be found in schools, hospitals, and even temples. Lawmakers also passed a measure in December that will allow more foreign workers to enter the country for longer periods of time and, in some cases, with a path towards obtaining Japanese citizenship. Birth rates aren't just falling in Japan. South Korea has one of the lowest fertility rates in the world. Around the globe, the fertility rate fell more than 50% from 4.99 in 1960 to 4.4 by 2016, according to the World Bank. Japanese researchers found that among unmarried people between the ages of 18 and 34, nearly 70% of men and 60% of women were not in a relationship, reported the Japanese Times. So that's a lot of people. 70% of men and 60% of women are not even in any kind of relationship. Well, damn, I guess you're not having babies. That's the majority, isn't it? That's the majority of the youth population. But that isn't necessarily why the country is producing fewer babies. Oh, yes, it is. That's one of the reasons, along with many other factors. A major factor may be a dearth of stable jobs for young people. Since the 1990s, labor laws change, leading to more part-time and contract work, according to The Atlantic. That could have affected people's trajectory, building a class of men who don't marry and have children because they and their potential partners know they can't afford to. Wow. So as you can see, what's that? 5 boys and 2 girls. But as you can see, they said Japan's population decline is speeding up. So this seems to be a global issue, not with every group though. Not with every group. It seems to be the the Asians and the Caucasians. Now, there are some other places, because Puerto Rico had a low birth rate, and parts of South America as well, and Mexico. So it's not entirely just those 2 groups. It's other people sprinkled in there too. But please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family. It's no secret that Japan has been struggling really hard with a population decline for quite some time. And their population was declining even before the Fukushima um, disaster happened over there, but it's really bad now. And I'm going to show you how bad. So, Japan needs immigrants, but do immigrants need Japan? All right, so because things are really going south as far as Japan's population, it is just like populations that you see all over the globe. You have this very large, older population, and then you have a younger population that is way smaller. And this seems to be happening in the West and Eastern countries. And we know Japan is an island. As Japan's population gets older and smaller, the government is struggling to balance its own deeply conservative views on immigration with the need for new and younger workers. Public opinion is on the side of change. Despite perceptions of xenophobia, a 2018 Pew survey revealed that 59% of Japanese believe immigrants would actually make the country stronger. They're saying a lot of the same things that you hear out of the West, and I actually think that's where they're getting it from. And if these Asian nations would just look a little closer at the West, it's really not saving the West at all. It isn't. This week, Japanese lawmakers approved a policy change proposed by Prime Minister uh, Shinzo Abe that will create a new visa categories to allow an estimated 340,000 foreign workers to take both high-skilled and low-wage jobs in Japan over the next 5 years. Boy, I tell you, with Fukushima and I seen how their babies come out all deformed and everything, if I was a immigrant, I sure wouldn't go to Japan. I don't think that's a good choice at all. While this represents a major shift in Japan's approach to immigration, many experts argue it doesn't go far enough. So here's a student from Vietnam that came to pursue a higher education in Japan. Shrinking nation, Japan is already a super age nation, meaning that more than 20% of its population is over 65. Just 946,060 babies were born. In 2017, a record low since official records began in 1899. So, their decline actually started centuries ago. The decline means a shrinking cohort of workers is left supporting an increasingly elderly population in need of health care and pensions. So you see how they rose, and then it seems like they hit their peak in 2010. And then from that point on, it has been a steady decline in their population. Japan isn't the only country with such a problem. No, this decline is definitely global. Germany is also a super aged nation. By 2030, The US, UK, Singapore, and France are expected to have earned that status, while the EU and US veered towards it doesn't matter, populism and adopt anti-immigrant stances, and Asian nations are competing for new arrivals, potentially reversing the power balance between immigrants and host countries. If Abe is to prevent Japan's population from dipping below 100 million by 2060, he will need to provide immigrants good reason to choose the country. All right. So there's something else that I want to show you, ladies and gentlemen. This article came out on December 6, 2018 from the Daily Sabah. Japan giving away free homes left empty by population decline. So they are giving these homes away to young families that want it at no cost. And you remember I did a story on Italy's population decline that's so bad. Any young married couples that have children, they are giving them free land at no cost in Italy. So they're trying all kinds of tactics to get their population back up, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. The Japanese government is giving homes to young families at little or no cost as part of a new plan that encourages younger generation to live in the countryside while working to fill the growing number of empty properties. The government is aiming to fill some estimated, listen to this, 8.2 million abandoned houses, referred as ghost houses. Akia in Japanese. Ghost houses, 8.2 million abandoned houses due to population decline. That is crazy, y'all. Applicants must be under the age of 43 and have at least one child under 18 of age to be eligible. The program also requires that the new residents of the houses remain permanently in the countryside. Wow. A declining population and young people migration to cities have left millions of homes empty in rural parts of Japan, according to Japanese Policy Forum. There are 61 million houses for 52 million households in 2013. That problem is only expected to worsen in the coming years. Japan's population is expected to decline from 127 million to about 88 million by 2065, according to the National Institute of Population and Social Security, bound to leave millions more homes vacant. While it may be fighting a losing battle, trust me, you are fighting a big-time losing battle. The government's program, it's an effort merely to keep some villages in existence. Analysts estimate 30% of the houses in Japan will be abandoned by 2033, while nearly 900 towns and villages across Japan will no longer exist by 2040. That's a pretty rapid decline when you really think about it. Those years are really not that far off. I mean, we're approaching 2019. You're not talking about a long span of time. This is pretty rapid. when you see how fast everybody, in the East and West are declining. But this is wild, y'all. So many empty homes left due to the population decline in Japan that they are giving them away for free. Wow. You know, Ladies and gentlemen, I told many of you that I used to live in Europe. Do you know they have this same situation in Germany where I used to be? They got a lot of homes. They had a lot of homes sitting empty back when I was there. So you can imagine how bad it is. I was reading stories that there's even more there now. Homes just sitting there. They don't have enough people to fill the homes. This is not just Japan. This is also happening in Europe all over the place. So don't be surprised if you start hearing more of these stories about free homes given away because they just don't have the population anymore to fill the homes. Wow. These are some amazing times to be living in, y'all. It really is. I never thought I was going to be alive to see the things that I'm seeing happening in this world. But please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I will see you on the next video. Peace, family. I'd like to thank one of my subscribers, Ada Bennell, for this story. This came out from Brookings, and I'll leave the link to this article in the description box. The U.S. Census Bureau release of race and age statistics for 2017. So that's what we're going to discuss. Now, this article is really acknowledging what we already know is the decline of the white population in the US, and Generation Z Plus is minority white census show. Now we know that the decline technically has been going on since the 60s. They really can't hide this anymore because it is becoming very noticeable that there's fewer of them, and it is already a known fact that the white elderly population is their last largest population, and we know they're old and they're in the process of dying out now. Those are your baby boomers. So let's get into this. So this is going to show you statistics that were released for 2017. Points to two noteworthy milestones about the nation's increasingly aging, white, and growing diverse population. First, for the first time since the Census Bureau has released these annual statistics, they show an absolute decline in the nation's white, non-Hispanic population, accelerating a phenomena that was not projected to occur until the next century. And this is why they're acting out so much, ladies and gentlemen. You see these public rants and these phone calls that on a bunch of non-crimes. They are acting out. It's going to get worse. None of these things are going to help repopulate them. I guess I'm going to go out screaming and hollering. I don't know. I don't know the concept behind that. I think it's stupid. you should be doing something way more constructive with your time. You know, if you really were about something, you would try to help and try to turn this around instead of unleashing your garbage out on the public, which is, what is that going to do for you? It's not going to do anything. Second, the new numbers show that for the first time, there are more children who are minorities. Well, if those kids outnumber white kids, they should not be labeled as minorities. That's the first thing. Then who are white at every age from 0 to 9. This means we are on the cusp of seeing the first minority white generation born in 2007 and later, which perhaps we can dub Generation Z plus. Together, these new data suggests that a signature feature of U.S. demographic change in the 21st century is the aging and declining of the white population, along with population growth among minorities to counterbalance the trend. White population decline. America's white population has been increasing since the first census was taken in 1790. You know, I found my family on that first census. And according to that census from 1790, my great grandfather could read and write. You remember they always said slaves could not read and write. He's on that census and he is listed as literate. He could read and write. He was listed as literate. So I have to laugh, and ladies and gentlemen, I found quite a few people that were on there listed as slaves, and they were listed as literate. It was not just people in my family. I found others too on that 1790 census. So I laugh when they try to come and say, you know, they think we can't trace our lineage. We most certainly can. It may be a little difficult, but you can do it. I did it. I traced my family. I traced them. I can tell you exactly the names of the ones that were slaves and everything, and who the owners was, all of that information. So, you know, those of you that are interested in doing this, it can be done. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. All right. So the table shows the change in non-Hispanic white population using data from the census of 1970 to 2010 and annual population estimates for 2011 to 2017 based on the recent release. These new numbers show for the first time an absolute decline in the nation's white population of more than 9,000 whites between 2015 and 2016, and more than 31,000 whites between 2016 and 2017. These new estimates revise earlier census estimates, which show white gains between 2015 and 2016. And ladies and gentlemen, after that, they have not had another increase. They haven't had another increase since then. Here's the chart. Let me see if I can blow this up so y'all can see it. All right. So you can see in the 1970s and 1980, so they gained over 11 million. A decade later, in the 1990s, they gained nearly 8 million. By 2000 census, they gained about 6 million. By 2010, their gain, that is a significant drop from a decade earlier. You had a 6 million increase in population, and you went down to a little roughly over 2 million. And that's in a decade. That is even when you look here between the 80s and the 90s, they went through a pretty steep decrease then too. But you can really see it from 2000 to 2010. By 2011, they only gained over 600,000 increase in population. And from that point on, it has been downhill. So 154, well, roughly 155 in 2012, 2013, 51,000 was their increase in population. Wow. About 110,000 in 2014, 2015, about 42,000 right here. And then after 2015, they have been decreasing. They're in the negative. They have not had an increase in their population for 3 years? Because we're in 2018 now. So the last time they had a little bump was 2015, and they have not had an increase since then. That's negative 9,475 in 2016 and negative 31,516. So they have not had a decrease in population going on 3 years. And this is going to get worse because you remember their elderly are dying out, and you got your drug addicts that are dying out simultaneously with the elderly population. So yeah, it's extreme. Although these annual white declines are extremely modest, of minus 0.005 and did previously this year. Those projections showed the white population declining after 2023. This is indicative of a general aging of the white population, which means proportionately fewer white women in their childbearing years and an excess of deaths over births, a natural decrease. The recent downsizing of the white population could reflect post-recession related fertility declines in the white population, leading to an inflation of white natural decrease to the highest levels of the last 6 years. The past year also showed a downturn in white immigration. Well, I don't know why a lot of Europeans would come here anymore. Number one, they got free health care. I mean, if you want those kind of people, how are you going to entice them to come when you got to pay an astronomical amount for health care? So the good news for the nation is that the white aging and potential future declines will be countered by gains in racial minorities. These populations increase by 4.7 million in the 2 years that the white population declined, including gains of 2.4 million and 1.2 million among all other races. You see how they left us out? I know is that for the first time, minorities outnumber whites nationally for the age under 10, while earlier estimates revealed minority white status for some of these youthful ages. This is how solidly the case for individuals born in each year since 2007. Okay. Wow. Okay, so this is showing under age 10 population is minority white. You can see it right here where you see the bracket. Yeah, you can see their biggest population really is their 45. I think like around 45 is their 45. I think like around 45 to 75. Okay. Hence this generation, which might be called Generation Z plus, is the first truly minority white generation, Texas and Nevada, plus the District of Columbia. In each